We've made it. We're a big podcast. We've got over 15 million subs now. We could quite easily coast.
Anthony Smith and Will Perez are two of the best editors in the game. The hands behind The Diary of a CEO and Behind the Diary by Steven Bartlett. Most people never see them, but today they're sharing what it actually takes to build one of the biggest podcasts and brands in the world.
This question annoyed me.
Yeah, it did. It actually annoyed me.
Let me be real, because
the way AI is going, we're going to see even more AI slop and more bad edits because people are focusing so much on the cool that they're neglecting everything that's underneath the surface level of this iceberg.
I'd actually disagree with you in some stages. And feel free to jump in and debunk me, but...
Long form or short form?
Long form. It's that simple. What about you?
Well,
I see so many people on YouTube start with like a cinematic drone shot that's 15 seconds long. And I watch and I'm like, how many people have just left? How many people have just left?
How do you handle creative disagreements on notes?
I might get cancelled for this one. Okay, I have a potentially controversial opinion. And it's that... Is it on silent? Yeah.
Wow.
Quick one. We're here with a very special episode of Creators on Creators for you today.
We had Will Perez, who is the filmmaker and editor for Steven Bartlett and the brains behind the Diary. We also had on Anthony Smith, who is head of trailers for Diary of a CEO.
We're here filming today at Cube, one of our favorite places to film. If you yourself have a podcast or you're a creative in any way, Cube is the place for you. Definitely check them out down below if you want to become a member. It's the home of Creators on Creators at the moment, and we absolutely love it.
And if you've made it this far, make sure you do 3 things. Subscribe to Creators on Creators, become a Cube member, and enjoy the rest of the episode. See ya.
Hey, Ant.
Hey, Will.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So, Will, imagine I've never met you before. This is the first time we're meeting. What is your name and what do you do?
My name is Will Perez. I am Steven Bartlett's lead filmmaker and editor, and I run a YouTube channel called Behind the Diary. What I do is I tell stories for a living. So with Behind the Diary, we tell the story of Steven Bartlett as an entrepreneur, and we publish it on YouTube. That's what I tell you I do.
Oh, what led you to start creating, and what has been your experience so far?
It's a good question. So my story starts in a classroom in year 8, and I was sat at the back of it. Now, I don't know what everyone else was doing, but I was on my phone, editing, split toning, cropping, denoising. And right in that moment, I heard from across the room a voice. And it was Mr. Williams, my teacher, who's this tall, dark eyebrows, dark eyes. He's a stern man. Will, what are you doing on your phone? And I kind of look up and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is the detention about to slap me in the face. He says, hand me your phone. At the end of the class, you can come back and get it back. So I did. And the end of the class came around and I walked up to the front of the classroom with my tail between my legs. And I looked down at his feet, up at him, and then to my phone. And he slowly turned it around. And this is when I was expecting the detention, the letter home. He turned it around and he said, Will, who took this photograph? You see, I'd spent the last few weeks playing around with my dad's camera that I'd just stolen, taking photographs at the zoo of my cat, of my pets, everything I had. And I told him, me, sir. He said, okay, perfect. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to go home, you're going to try these 3 photography experiments, you're going to come back to me next week, and we're going to have a look at the photos, all right? And I stood there looking at him. What do you mean? Where's my detention? And I didn't walk out of that classroom with the detention. I walked out with a small seed that had been planted for photography. I spent the next 3 years experimenting with new techniques, with ways to progress my learning as a photographer. At 18 years old, I launched a business and started as my local wedding photographer. At 19 years old, I launched a production company. And then at 21, I was invited to work with Steven Bartlett as his lead filmmaker. So that's where the little seed was planted that is slowly making its way up.
Damn, I never actually knew that story about you.
Yeah,
That's
bro.
insane. I actually genuinely didn't know that.
Shout out to Mr. Williams, you know. Like, it all started there. It all started in that classroom. I'm not lying.
100%. We all have that one teacher.
Oh,
that
man.
one teacher that changed everything. Mine was Miss Ridgewell.
Ooh, what did
She was the scariest human on planet Earth. And she was also like the deputy head.
Mm-hmm.
And so the this is going to sound horrible, but the only person you could like describe her as in fiction would be Miss Trunchbull. That's the aura that she had.
If you're watching Miss Richwell, it's not personal.
It's not personal. She'd probably admit it, bless her. But you would just always, when you saw her, you'd always feel like that woman has like the chokey in her office. You do not want to f around with this woman. And when you grow up, you're terrified of her. And then I found out that she taught media. And obviously I just loved film and I loved narrative and I loved stories. And what I realised through that was she was one of the kindest souls ever. When you got on her level and when you both found that interest, all she wanted you to do was like succeed in media and succeed telling stories and doing that thing that you loved in that field. And so like that always sticks with me in like a world where usually teachers are telling you like you need to be better at this subject, you need to be better at maths, you need to be better at science, all the academic stuff, which I was not good at all. It was like Miss Ridgewell who was like, no, you focus on this because you're very good at this. But yeah,
so true.
I absolutely love that.
What do you think we would have, if you're someone who hasn't had a teacher like that say that to you, because we're very privileged to have had that teacher have that moment, what do you think the teacher gave us that someone listening could give themselves?
I think the idea that not everyone has your life figured out for you. That ultimately 99% of people could probably push you down one path and say you need to do this, you need to hit this milestone by this amount, you need to get married, you need to have kids, you need to get this job that pays the bills. But if just one person says you don't have to do that, automatically that means that this is subjective. Those 99 people are subjective because one person said that you don't have to do that. If 100% said it, it'll be very hard to be like, this, I can't take this as not fact. But the fact that that one person said, no, there's a different route here, that can then make you think, hold on, there is other avenues that I can go down and I can focus on what I love and what I'm passionate about. And maybe I'll just open the door ajar to that pathway and just see where that goes.
I love that.
Next question. Will, lovely to meet you, by the way. Love your eyes.
As if, for those of you who don't know, Ant and I spend like every day talking about editing together. Like Ant works on the trailers, I work on Behind the Diary. And it's probably this like rotation of Ant coming to me and showing me an edit, us geeking out on editing for like 45 minutes, him sitting down, I come over in 20 minutes, we geek out on my edit, and we just have this relationship of constant feedback. So
yeah, one of my favourite videos that we ever done was it was complete. I had no idea it was being recorded, and you came over to me with the whole thing was for about a 10-second moment in one of your episodes, and it had to be about half hour, 45 minutes just trying to perfect that 10-second moment to then lead into the next section. And what I didn't realise was A, that I wasn't being filmed, but B, how we spoke to each other wasn't through English. No. It wasn't through our native tongue. Yeah, no. It was through, the only way I can describe it is just sound effects and gobbledygook music that we were trying to communicate. But in a weird way, we understood exactly where we were going with it. And I just love this idea of if you just take a step back and if you're not in that industry or if you're not from that world, you would watch and be like, what the are these two? They're just talking like minions to each other.
Editors get it though.
Editors get it. It's like our own language. So when you're cutting an episode, what are you trying to make the audience feel?
I do my edits back to front. So I start at the outcome in order to figure out how the first 3/4 of my edit should feel. I'll give you an example. I was just editing the video where Steven proposes to his partner, Melanie. Now that's the end of my edit. And a lot of people would jump straight there and say, okay, how do I make people feel something about this edit? What's the emotion? But for me, I understood that in order for people to care about the moment where Steven gets down on one knee to his partner, I had to focus on the first 3/4 of this edit. So I think for me, making someone feel something is about giving them all the context. Does the viewer understand where we are in this story? Do they understand who this person is? Making them go on the journey about how he got to this moment, about when he was an 18-year-old kid and he was single. How did he get to this moment today? Take them on the long-winded, engaging journey to the point where he gets down on one knee. You as a viewer are like, is he going to do it? So for me, a really good, doing the story justice looks like that, where you start with the outcome and you work your way from the very front of the edit.
I'm saying, and I love what you was doing there, which like implicates that emotional roller coaster, right? Which is like the thing that I've got this 15-point checklist, like you know,
do.
on my trailers, and every single trailer has to hit this 15-point checklist. If it doesn't hit it, then the trailer has to go out. So if it doesn't hit it, then we're sure as hell going to be working hard to make sure we do hit it. And one of them is that emotional roller coaster, right? Because at the end of the day, no human goes through their life feeling flat. We don't even go a single day feeling flat. You will have moments of fear, anxiety, happiness, laughter, joy, sadness, anger, and you'll have all of those probably within a day. And some of them you won't even realize you're doing. Your brain will pick it up. Inside of yourself will feel it, even though you're not intentionally sort of showcasing it to the world. But the idea that humans go through all this every day means something. And the fact that when you create content, if you really want to get to the core of the audience, if you really want them to feel related to this content and feel something towards that content, you've got to replicate how they feel in the everyday life, right? You've got to replicate all these emotions. That edit, like you say, starting with Steve with the proposal, I think so many people would want to just focus on that one moment. And sure, people can justify that. They probably can. And there's other ways you can do it. I've done similar things with my trailers where I start with the result and then go back. But where a lot of people foul is they then struggle to justify that reasoning, and then they struggle to take that audience back on that journey, where it can often lead them confused. And so, for example, like with me, one of my favorite trailers actually was when we had Steve-O on the show. And I know that people are most interested about the aftermath of Steve-O's career, where everything that he done, how does he feel, how has it led him to where he is now. That's technically the ending of the story, and that's what people want to know, because we know all the other stuff, we know all the jackass days, but how is he today? And so I knew people wanted to get there, so I give a little bit of a teaser if that's what it is. But the only way it works is if you then create that bridge or that justification to then go back. So the way I done it, for example, was we started in that moment, and then Steve would ask a question of, like, how did that make you feel, or something like that. And then I sort of constructed a line from a few different moments from the episode, because he didn't actually say it, which was like, oh, to understand that, I'm going to have to take you back to the beginning. And then
Such a good accent.
Thank you. It's gradually getting worse. And so that one line justified the entire narrative. That, okay, this is where we're hitting it, and now I've just given us permission to go right back to the start, so the audience knows that we're going to get this answer after we listen to all of this stuff. But it's this part here, the early context, like you're saying, is what builds up the necessary emotional requirements needed for the audience to then feel that payoff. And unless you give them that, they're not going to feel shit here. So you can create that little bit of intrigue, but even that, I think that's where a lot of people might go missing, because they just want to get to that moment there, and then the rest is trying to figure out, oh, how can we bring that emotion back? How can we go from the mountaintop and then somehow feel the exact same up there when we're down here? And you can't really. It's the climb at the end of the day.
So true.
What's something people completely misunderstand about editing behind the scenes footage?
Okay, I'm really passionate about this because I watch a lot of behind the scenes content for inspiration. People assume three things when they make YouTube videos of founders and behind the scenes content. They assume that people know, they assume that people care, and they assume that people don't notice. Let me go through one by one. They assume that people know. You need to imagine that someone clicking on your video has no idea who you are, what you do, what room you're in. Who is this person talking? What is this project they're talking about? You need to start from that principle. One of the things we do with Behind the Diary is we obsess over context. Every single room we're in, we tell you where it is. Every single person we show you, we'll tell you where they slot in terms of the org chart. Because we understand that if someone doesn't know, they don't feel. So you need to stop assuming they have all the context. The second thing, stop assuming they care about your brand, about your story, about this moment in the story. If you haven't done the critical work to make someone feel something by giving them all the context, by taking them on this emotional roller coaster, then they don't care. But a lot of us think that our product, our story, our moment on stage is so important that we just forget that this audience have no idea who you are, and therefore they have no reason to care. The third point, go on.
I was going to say, especially in today's society, right?
Right,
The way things is, people forget just like that.
100%. And I just see so many people think that just by being on your screen, they have earned your attention. I completely disagree. We do so much work to make sure that you have a reason to care. The last thing is this whole point of people don't think, people notice. And it reminds me of this clip Johnny Ives, Stephen Jobs' business partner, gives on stage, where he talks about how people very easily notice a lack of care. And for some reason, you don't know why, but you can tell when someone cares. I know that creators on creators care because when I came into this room, for some reason, everything was laid out perfectly and you can't explain it. You can't put your finger on exactly why. And we have this same principle in edits, whereby you can tell when someone cared about the color grade, about the sound design. Johnny Ives relates it to the fact that they coiled the cables for years in Apple with the right tab so that when you open the box, you don't know why, but you know they care. For me, that's something I always think about with Behind the Diary.
100%. And it's also, even when it comes to like restaurants, for example, when it comes to hospitality, people, when I go somewhere and you can tell people are doing amazing service, staff are friendly, everything's laid out really nice, you feel good about it. Usually that sparks a nice conversation between me and Helen about how much we love it. And that will stick with us. But what will also stick with us and also potentially lead to more action is when we go in and the staff are rude, that there's like dried food on the fork, which is a lot of the places I eat. That's what you tend to find.
You got to start eating out of bins. You got to get out of the bins, mate.
And so when the service is that bad, when they don't care, that leaves an even worse mark, because that's when they give the 1-star review and they're like, I'm never going to go here again. I'm never going to do this again. And so I think a lot of people think that, like you say, they almost take it for granted. It's the same with the Diary CEO, right? We could quite easily coast now. We could assume that we've got over 15 million subs now. We can assume that, okay, we've made it. We're a big podcast. We don't need to earn people's respect. We don't need to earn people to click and subscribe. We've got enough. The channel makes money. So we could drop those standards. I know for a fact, the second we do, that's what people are really going to start commenting about. That's what people are going to feel insulted by. That's what's going to make people drop off and make people want to move. And so they'll care more about that than they will with the tiny little details that we put in every single edit. And so from our perspective, I agree on every single point that you just said. And that's exactly whether, I guess it's been a subconscious thing because it's not on my checklist, but they're very similar things that what we do with the trailer. For example, what you say in terms of like with context, one of the points we do on the checklist is spoon feeding. How can we make this content as relevant to Jenny as possible? And Jenny is our metaphorical person who we assume doesn't know much. So can we cater to Jenny? Can Jenny understand everything that she needs to understand in order to then watch this episode? And so those elements there, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of, I don't think enough content creators actually care about that. So many assume that if they've got X amount of million of followers, for example, that they can just start assuming that people are just going to follow them and do what they need to do. And I think that's why I mentioned in today's society, I think that can just drop so quickly. The second people lose that interest or don't feel that investment, or they feel a bit confused, the second they actually have to work harder to stay with you, they can so easily just move on. So 100%, man, agree with every single moment of that. And so final question on this card, How did you develop your taste as an editor and storyteller?
See, I think a lot of the advice out there about developing taste is broken. Because they tell you how to do it in theory. The only way to develop taste is in practice. My journey from 16 years old to 21 years old was essentially repeating a practice until I developed a style. If you're trying to develop your style without doing the work, day in, day out, it's like trying to forge cold steel. So I would say to anyone who's trying to develop their style, get out there. Stop looking for your style and start looking for work. Over time, through osmosis, through the people you watch, through the work that you create, you will see your style develop. It's not something you consciously think about. I truly believe that.
Damn. Very nice. Card 1 is done.
Woo!
I have to say, these cards are actually... I love these cards.
Do you know what I mean? You can tell someone cares.
Yeah. That's
This
the first
is
thing.
the prime example.
That was the first thing I noticed when I saw them, was the Doak logo. And it just felt so unique. Never felt more special.
This is a prime example of, like, you would have known if they just didn't do this. And you wouldn't be able to say, oh, like, they have such low standards. But the fact that they've put it on this, the fact that they've stacked them, they've printed them, the paper's thick, I just know that they have an immense eye for detail. That is like this point visualized.
Yeah, and even just the logo. Like, it's fine without it. It still looks stunning as a card. But that little 1% just makes you feel, it made us feel good when we walked in. And that just arguably then means we're going to have better conversations. That, to be fair, when I first saw that, I was like, oh shit, I'm actually going to have to put my A game on, because like, these guys have gone for a lot of effort for me
imagine
here.
you put in all this detail and then we tank
shit.
it.
Well, it's only just started, mate.
Damn. Okay.
Okay.
We'll do our best.
All right, segment 2. You ready? We've got a quick fire round here, Will. Premiere Pro, Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, and why?
Premiere Pro.
Why?
Because it links so natively to After Effects. If you're doing any animation and you want to do it in After Effects, use Premiere Pro. I used to be in DaVinci as well. I hold my hands up. What about you?
100% Premiere Pro. And literally for the exact same answer, Premiere Pro. What I love most about Premiere Pro and Adobe as a whole was the idea that it had such bad stigma about it. So everyone was like, use Final Cut or Avid, for example. Especially in the industry, you've got to use Avid. And for like an editor like me that hadn't been brought up on that, it's sort of a bit disheartening. But what I loved about what Adobe did is they went to David Fincher for the film Gone Girl, and they were like, look, we want you to edit Gone Girl on Premiere Pro, and we will do whatever it takes. We'll make any modifications your editors need to do it. And David Fincher is like a proper stickler for edits, and the fact that he came to him, gave those modifications, they worked it, and then they edited Gone Girl on that. For me, that was like, okay, if Hollywood can work on it, we can work on it.
Yeah, I agree.
Laptop edit or monitor setup?
Laptop. I do most of my edits in the back of an Uber, in the back of a plane, sat down in a hotel lobby. What about you?
Laptop. If you cannot learn to adapt and work anywhere, I think you'll start getting left behind. Especially in today's world. If you're trying to make it as a content creator, there's chances that you have to go here, there, and everywhere. Like you have to, like us, like we have to. And so, like a couple of weeks ago, we were going off to LA. We worked in the airport. We then worked on the plane. We then worked whilst we was waiting for baggage. We're doing all these things. If you've got a laptop and if you can adapt to a laptop, then you're always going to be able to edit. If you rely so much on a monitor setup and like with your mouse and with your keyboard, you're just going to start struggling. I always see it as like manual automatic car. Learn the manual first, because once you've learned that, going automatic is fine. But if you learn automatic first, going to manual is going to be fucking hard. So that's how I see the difference. Long form or short form?
Long form. It's that simple. For me, long form. I like watching a story arc progress. What about you? I have a lot of respect for short form, though. Like, short form's hard.
Yeah.
Because it's a game of reduction. And I actually sometimes think it's easier to mask bad content in long form. Short form really exposes bad content because you don't have that long.
Nice.
What about you?
Well, I mean, as director of trailers, known for making 90-second content, I should say short form, but I'm going for long form.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going for long form because
hell?
that's what I grew up loving. You know, I always believe that a story should be as short as it can be to get the message across, to get the context across, to get the emotion across. But there are so many times when I'm editing a trailer where I know I have to cut it because I'm limited by that duration. Where I was just, in my head, I just think I would love to explore that part more, go proper into depth with it, like the storytelling I can do in that moment with the emotions. With long form, I'd love to do that. So controversial take, long form, and we are so in sync. It's so cute. Hard cuts or smooth transitions?
Hard cuts. I love a hard cut, okay? Like, a lot of these fancy transitions are distractions, but if you pace and edit correctly, sometimes a hard cut is the one that, like, hits the most for me. What do you think?
I would say hard cut, but I am going to go team smooth transition only.
You're wrong.
Only if you can justify the smooth transition and make it part of the story. There is nothing better than when you can implicate a transition as part of that story. If you, for example, one of my favorite transitions ever was the Annie Jacobsen trailer, where she's describing what's going to happen in the event of a nuclear war. We cut to Steve, we crash zoom into his eye, and we see a nuclear bomb go off into his eyes, pupil turned into the globe. It's beautiful. It took me hours to do. Traditionally, I would do as a hard cut, but doing that smooth transition in and out just really elevated that moment of like so much. There's so much like context behind it, so much meaning behind it, that we're watching the world unfold through Stephen's eyes as Annie Jacobsen's describing to it. So it's like this idea of like, she's such a good storyteller that Steve's picturing it as she's saying it, and we're picturing it along with Steve. So it sort of creates that bond between the two. So that's when I think a smooth transition is just beautiful. Other than that, hard cuts. Edit for retention or edit for storytelling?
This question annoyed me.
Yeah, it did. It actually annoyed me.
Let me be real, because it's not a choice. You have to pick both.
Yeah, but you have to pick one.
Both.
You have to pick one.
Oh man, edit for storytelling. Okay, nuance.
I'm just as annoyed at you. By the way, I am fucking fuming. That's why I've poured more water, because I need to calm down. But rules of the game, and we're anything but put our head in the sand and hope for it to go over. We've been given a job, so you've got to choose one.
My take is that if you edit for storytelling, you should be editing for retention anyway. Because if you edit for a great story, you will retain people. A lot of short form content, you know the feeling when you're watching something and it's like bang, 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 bang. And I'm almost like, well, what the hell's the story? Really good storytelling content is retentive because your brain has no choice but to watch. So I will always edit for storytelling.
Edit for storytelling, 100% echo with that. If you can't tell a good story, you'll just lose people, or you just end up with empty views, empty likes, empty clicks. With storytelling, that's how you really engage people. And if you've done your job, like you say, naturally, you've retained them. One editing shortcut you can't live without.
How long have you guys got? Because I genuinely could geek out on this for hours. For me,
Quickfire.
I have R as fast forward.
Yeah.
Because we have 40, 50 hours of selects that we pull for a week of an episode. And I'm like watching everything on 2 times, sometimes 3 times speed to pull my selects. So fast forward.
Fair play. Mine is Shift Command D, which adds I think it's like a 2-frame cross audio dissolve, because that, when you're editing for podcast trailers, is a bit of a lifesaver to make sure the sentences just flow nicely between the two. Like if you see one of my timelines, it is very much cut. So it is very easy to essentially forget that you need those cross rolls, and that's when you get those little sharp, harsh tones, which can really take you out. It's just so nice being able to highlight it. Shift Command D, all of them get that nice little thing sorted. If you had to lose one piece of equipment, what goes and why?
I have so many pieces of equipment.
Yeah, you do.
I'm not romantic about equipment.
Quickfire.
Sorry, bro. I would lose my camera. Hear me out. I would love the chance to try and create what we do with like a phone. Because I think creativity really thrives under a constrained brief. So I'd say, hey, let's lose a camera and see what we could create. And we'd probably end up doing something really unique.
Fairs.
What about you?
You could have just said pen and then you would have been able to do everything you wanted to do. But if I had to lose my massive curved screen,
You need to pull up a photo of Ant's screen right now. This guy has a spaceship in front of him.
I love it. It's like when you get the timeline on that screen, the reason why I got it was because it sort of cuts off the outside world a bit, so you see all that. But
You think you're Tony Stark.
yeah, that's the closest I can get.
You think you're Tony Stark.
But I know that I can edit on the smallest screen ever. So it literally, if I had to lose anything, it'll be that screen, and it's because I can still do my job very successfully without it. Boom. Done. Segment 3, the process and the pressure. That's something you know a lot about. What's the hardest part of editing a Behind the Diary episode? Luckily for you, this ain't quickfire.
So some context for the audience that's probably useful here is that for Behind the Diary, we film 7 days a week with Steve. So we've spent the last 3 years documenting him every single day, every single meeting, every single room, every single failure, every single triumph, everything. So for me, that means that when we're producing an episode, we put parameters in place. So we'll say from this date to this date is our episode. We then take that, put it onto a timeline, and we get to this horrible moment where you have 45 hours of footage. And you say, great, what's our 20-minute episode? So the hardest part, the real skill, is something I call sifting for gold. We have to build something retentive that's 20 minutes long from 45 hours. How do we do it? For me, editing is 2 stages. For one of them, I bring a shovel, and for the other, I bring a toothbrush. The shoveling stage of an edit is a game of reduction. I've got my shortcut R, I'm flying through clips, and I'm listening to what jumps out at me. We call this pulling selects. I will take a 45-hour timeline, I'll reduce it down to 2 hours. If I have my shovel, I'm digging out all the stuff that's useless, digging until I have something where, for me, the key value is distilled down. Then I get my toothbrush out. And this is the fun part. This is where you're really just refining, you're whittling it down, you're finding the key points, you're starting to polish them, and then you should have about 50 minutes of something that's polishable. Sorry, you should have about 50 minutes of something that's polished and the key points are standing out. But getting to that place is so hard. One of the things that's helped us is being really principled in the content we create. We have 5 personas for Behind the Diary, and these are people that we know watch the episodes. I won't spoil them on camera. But every single edit decision we make, every piece of content we create, every select we pull has to link in some form to these personas. Does it provide value for them? It's a much easier way to pull footage because you're not guessing. You're not saying, okay, well, I know the context here and I know why I care. You start to think, does this audience member have the context? Does this audience member gain some value? So pulling selects for me is and crafting a story from it is the hardest part.
Amen. At what point does a story reveal itself to you?
A story reveals itself when you've done the hardest part, which is reducing all the noise. So you've got your massive clip, you've got your 2-hour presentation, you've reduced it down to the most simple idea. So if it's a 2-hour meeting with Steve, and I've managed to cut it down to one point that's about 6 minutes, that's when the story is clear for me. Because I can just focus on making this moment as retentive as possible, as engaging as possible, and as nuanced as possible. So it's after the reduction where the story is really clear for me. I think a lot of storytelling gets confused because you're looking at too many things. You need to reduce, and get to the one simple idea.
100%. How do you decide what gets cut, especially when everything feels important? See, this is this I know you'll struggle with because I've seen your footage, I've seen how much you shoot, and I know just how much of it is important. And so I'm very eager to know the answer to this one.
As I said, we decide what to cut by understanding who we're cutting for. So we start by being really principled in the content we create. We have 5 Behind the Diary personas. They are real people who we know watch the channel. One of them is the founder of a $500 million company. One of them is the founder of a $1 million company. One of them is a sofapreneur. The others love self-help. And the other one has just started something on TikTok Shop. We know that these 5 personas are the people that we must serve value to. We understand that they don't care and they don't know anything about our channel. So therefore, when we're selecting for Behind the Diary, we say, do they have the context? Do they have a reason to care? Have we given them a reason to care? And thirdly, do they get some form of value from this? The best thing you can do as an editor is remove your bias. The curse I have as an editor is the context, is the knowledge. because I have this rose-tinted romance when I look at footage when I'm like, oh, well, that inside joke is actually pretty funny because I understand. You need to take yourself out of the shoes that you're in and put yourself in the viewer of the person at home who's cooking this whilst watching something else, whilst cooking, and their child is screaming in the background. If it serves them, it serves your edit.
100%. And it helps so much knowing that the people watching your end product have no idea what they're missing. They don't know. Obviously, they've not seen the rushes. They've not seen the cuts. So that actually helped for me because I was really struggling at times, especially when we started leaning more into data as an episode. Because then what that meant was Steve was starting to ask even more questions because more data was revealing more topics and more topics was revealing more questions, more questions was revealing answers that were like, okay, this is going to be relevant because they've been asked because of the data, right? And so when that started to happen, when I really started noticing it happen, I really struggled because I was like, it's going to get to a point where if I want to introduce all of these topics, I'm not going to have enough time to create any context, any emotional roller coasters, any narrative here. And then there was just something that just clicked. And I think it was actually when I was giving feedback to Liv, which was like, yeah, but these people won't know that's in there. So it's fine. As long as what is in there is still massively important and it still links to the data and we know that it's important and we know it'll relate to the audience, that thing that they're missing, they will still have a chance to get that in the main episode. And so for me, having that understanding of like, it takes a little bit of pressure off because no one in the outside world is going to send me a message and be like, but Anne, what about this moment? Why weren't that moment in there? Because they don't know it was ever going to be there. And so for me, that really helped.
Okay, and I want to actually ask you this because you work with 2.5, 3, 4, 5 hour podcasts sometimes, and you are pulling them to 90 seconds of gold. So how do you decide what gets cut?
So that whole process has changed because, I mean, I've been doing this for like over 4 years now. And so the processes of what gets cut, how it gets made has changed every single time. Now we've become a team and a company that we want to kill as much of the guesswork as possible, right? We lean a lot into data. And so for me, what helps a lot is the first thing I want to do once I've read the entire episode. So usually that can be around about 115 to maybe like 150 odd pages. So I'll read all of that and I'll take my own notes and condense that 115 pages down to like maybe 15, which in itself is probably around about 45 minutes worth of content. Once I've done that, it's then, okay, so now I need to establish the ranking of how important this is to the audience, of why we brought this guest on, why does this conversation need to happen? And we've got an incredible guest research team, right, that just provides us so much data, what people are searching for the most based on this topic, what the winning thumbnails are, what are their most watched clips, their most watched moments. So we know the history of that guest, and we'll do our own history as a team as well. We'll go into and see, okay, where are they most popular on Instagram versus what are they most popular on YouTube. We'll sort of look into what their audience is also watching, because we also want to have that opportunity to bring in new people to subscribe and watch our show, right? And so now that we collate all of that data, it's okay, so what's the most important here meets the most engaging and the most impactful from what I've just read. And so when it comes to deciding what to get cut, we do a lot of hard cutting at the start, a lot of faff, a lot of potential huge explainers. The beauty of a trailer is that you're not supposed to give all away. And I think sometimes we forget that as editors. But the beauty of a trailer is the idea is that we're teasing you here. We're supposed to give you enough information to want to watch the full thing. But that doesn't mean we have to give you everything. And so usually we'll purposely add something what I call a moment of value, where we'll give away something for free. And this was taken away from what shops and supermarkets used to do when you used to walk in and they would give away free fruit. So you'd pick up a banana on the way of your shop, and you're more likely to spend more money and have a positive reflection on that brand. And the idea, and this is also why restaurants give out free bread. You're more likely to spend more money in the restaurant once you've had the free bread. And that's because I think deep down, subconsciously, when we're offered that, it does two things. One, it goes, okay, like you're giving me something here. That's really kind of you. I sort of have this little bit of trust towards you now. The other side creates a tiny little bit of a guilt complex of like, oh, you've given me a present, I need to give you a present. You've done tick, I need to do tack. And so once we establish what our moment of value is, the rest, we have that beauty of, okay, we can tease this here and there. So as the process has gone harder and harder because so many more topics are being unveiled, we can tease a lot more. But ultimately, it's in the service of the story, right? So how can I get from A to B, lead to C, and leave the audience wanting more through the topics that we've got? So we want to establish context. We want to establish their why. We want to establish what the problems are. We want to establish what the solutions could be. We want to establish what the costs are, which is why our trailers, actually, I think we have about 6 different narrative structures that I've created for our trailers for any editors can then just look at that blueprint and be like, okay, I want to do the defense lawyer structure. And so when you decide where that structure is coming from, that then allows you to be like, okay, well, we can cut this part of too much of context here, too scientifical here, we just want to tease that moment. Okay, this bit they say really succinctly, we can put that in because that can be our moment of value. Okay, this bit they're like, this getting emotional, they're talking about a family member, that's what's unique to DOAC, so we know that has to go in. So essentially we're finding what are the non-negotiable elements that we need, and then it's about crafting that story. So, I mean, it's a difficult process. Every Monday, every Thursday, it starts off with like, how the fuck am I going to cut this down? I've literally just done that for this upcoming one. And I've been doing this for four and a half years. And I'm still like, there's too much in this. I don't know how I can explain it. And again, like you say, the problem I've got is like, I know people will love that moment, but I know people will love that moment, and I know people will love that moment. So now it's like the data suggests that this, though, is what more people will look for. That's second, that's third. So I need to go into that order.
So how do you care about storytelling? You care about data.
Yes.
You understand the platform you publish on.
Mm-hmm.
As an editor, what's the balance?
So ultimately, I think every single content creator, editor, every single marketer, if they want to go down this route of content creation, they essentially need 3 metaphorical hats. So this is something I'm working on at the moment, which is you have your top hat, your baseball cap, and your hard hat. The top hat is what I call is like your experience hat. So that's where you might have gone to film school, for example. That's your experience up to this moment. You've learned all the codes and conventions of horror films, of rom-coms. You know how to tell a story. You understand narrative structure. You've read through Pixar's 20 narrative bullet points that they've got. You've got all of this knowledge in story and that skill and that experience. Now, if you then want to move that into a marketing world, you need your baseball cap, which is my marketing hat. The marketing hat, they care more about the outcome and I guess, how it's going to have a lasting impression on their audience and bring them in to buy a service or to lead them to watching an episode. They care more about that than they do how to tell a good story. So whilst you have the artist side in you being like, oh no, it's got to have this beginning going into this middle, and you need this little intricacy here, and you need to dive deep into this moment in this. The marketer will be like, yeah, but they don't give a shit about that. They want to know about what Steve-O's up to now, because we know that's what's going to draw people in. And so that's when you need to then take that marketing hat off and put the top hat on and be like, okay, so that's the challenge I've been given. Steve-O, in fact, an amazing example I'll give is Jurgen Klopp. Mm-hmm. Jurgen Klopp is one of my favorite ever trailers because we wanted to give moment of value from the offset with Jurgen Klopp, because we understood that, okay, we're probably going to bring in a lot of football fans. We know we're going to bring in a lot of Liverpool fans, and we know we're going to bring in a lot of Man U fans because of everything that's been going on. But how do we bring in people who don't really care that much about football? How can Jenny listen to a Jurgen Klopp episode and feel inspired and feel like they want to do something, right? So that in itself offers its own unique challenge. And so that's where I was like, okay, well, let's try and start with a moment of value as soon as we can. Once we've sort of got the hook out of the way, which is going to really, really tease those Liverpool fans and get them hooked, how can we now bring it out for the other audience? And so the moment of value I wanted to give is this idea of leadership, that he was successful everywhere that he's been. He's taken clubs from the brink of either like relegation or bankruptcy or like turmoil, and he's turned them into clubs that people love, and not just the fans, but football fans around it just love him and love the club and what they're doing. That's such a huge achievement for a football manager to do repeatedly. So we've now established that this guy is successful, no matter how you look at it. His moment of value is it all comes through leadership. The fact that his team are walking through fire for this guy. How the hell, if I'm a manager of a company, or if I'm a leader of a business, or if I'm starting, how can I get people to walk through fire with me and go on this journey? So that's our moment of value setup. Steve then asks, how do you do that? And that's when the top hat comes out and Jurgen says the line was like, I'll better go back to the start. Similar to that Steve-O line. That then gave permission for us to put the top hat back on and go into Jurgen's story, which is what the top hat loves. It's now creating that context and that emotional upbringing with his parents and all of that sort of stuff. The marketing hat, the baseball cap, is happy because we've ticked all our marketing goals here. We're appealing to Liverpool fans. We're appealing to football fans. We're appealing to Man U fans. We're appealing to Jenny. We're appealing to people who may not necessarily understand football or care about football, but they might care about leadership and they might care about working together as a team. So the marketing hat's happy at that point. Now the top hat gets its turn to do that. And so those two hats need to constantly shift between the two. You can't have both on because that's when the clash happens. The amount of times I've had an argument with myself about, well, this is in the pursuit of the story, but it don't mean anything because no one's going to stay around this long because you're boring them because of the storyline here. So you're constantly in this friction, which is why I say hats, because when you take that top hat off, you have to go into marketing mode and you have to look at it as like, okay, well, we want people to lead and watch this episode, and we want as many people to do that as possible. That means we have to market this further than football. Now, then we have our third hat, which is our newest hat, and a hat that a lot of people hate wearing, especially at the moment, which is the hard hat. No one quite likes wearing a hard hat. If you go to a construction site, you've spent millions on this, building this business, building this huge, amazing building, and then like the foreman gives you a hard hat and you feel like, oh, I'm going to look like a twat in this. You don't really want to, but it's necessary for your safety. It's so necessary. And so the hard hat is our data hat. Now, you might have the top hat being like, oh, I want to do this in the pursuit of story and emotion. You then have the marketing hat. Well, we want to bring in this person, this person, this person, and we want to do that quickly because we've got goals to achieve here. We've got to bring these people in and make them watch an entire episode. And now this is where the hard hat comes in and be like, and by the way, these people are searching this the most. People watch this moment the most. People, we know that if you switch this subject here at this moment in time, you're more likely to retain them. I don't want to be the guy who tells you how to do your job here, but all of the data here is saying that you should probably do this. Top hat's like, piss off, hard hat. Like, you know nothing about story. You literally just look at data. Marketing hat is like, yeah, that's not that sexy. Like, okay, they're talking about this, but we want to bring them all over there. But heart is like, well, fine. But this is how you bring people in and you retain them. And this is how the data has shown that repeatedly this has worked. So that's when, okay, the top hat has to come back on and be like, well, we know that this is the most searched. We know that Liverpool are playing Man U on this Sunday, the Sunday before this episode drops. If Liverpool lose, the data shows that one of the most searched elements on Google will be will Arne Slot get fired? Can we bring Jurgen Klopp back? Those will be the most searched areas. The people they'll be watching the interviews will be, shall we bring Jurgen back? We've done a fan poll, etc. So that's what the hard hat's telling. So now the top hat's like, okay, we've got to run with this. So how can we make this as emotionally as engaging as possible? And the marketing hat is like, okay, but make sure also that we can still somehow relate this to Jenny and make them want to watch the full episode. So don't give everything away here. The top hat's like, oh, but I like an ending. Middle hat's, no, you need to do a cliffhanger in this moment. Okay, fine. So you sort of meet this compromise between the hats. And so that's why I believe like every editor, every content creator, if you want to make something that's successful online, especially in this day and age, you need to adopt all three hats.
Oh, man. I love that concept so much.
Thanks.
It's so dope.
Trademarked. How do you balance storytelling versus retention versus platform performance?
Do you know what? I thought your answer was so good that I'm actually tempted to be like, just wear three hats. Wear three hats, guys. Because I truly agree. I truly agree.
You do, but you can't wear them at the same time because
Yeah.
you look a twat. Anyone walking around with three hats on looks like a twat, right? And the reason why they're hats is because you, if you take a step back, if you're wearing your top hat, you need to focus on the story, but you can't allow other elements to start clouding your judgment. Otherwise, you're just going to go round and round in circles. There's been times when I've been wearing both hats at the same time, and you cannot make a decision. What you need to do is wear one first, create it, flip the hat on, and then be like, okay, it just doesn't work in that moment. Okay, take that off, put that back on. That's the feedback I've been given. I need to make that work. If you're wearing both at the same time, as you're constructing it, you're constantly going to be like, oh, maybe that don't work, but maybe that don't tick that moment. But they always say, right, one of the best things you can do if you're writing a book or if you're writing an essay, is just write it first. If you make your foundation, then you're just chipping away at it and you're making it work. If you're building it in that process and you've got that constant stream of doubt, it's going to take you so much longer to make it. And I've fallen into that trap so many times, especially before I sort of cemented this idea of the three hats. Before I cemented that, I fell into that trap so many times. And it was only when I realized it's like, okay, for this morning, I'm just going to wear my top hat. And so I'm just going to have fun with this. I'm going to create a story. Yeah, I'm going to create a story with my oracle, with my cane. I'm going to make it. And then after lunch, I'm going to put on the marketing hat and I'm going to tear that thing to shreds. And then at the end of the day, I've already worn my hard hat because obviously I've gone through the data before. I'm going to put the hard hat back on and be like, well, it ticks these boxes, but it's missing this box. So then the next day, okay, the top hat's back on. Okay, this is my feedback.
Nice.
Now I need to tell a story based on that feedback.
I love that.
How do you balance storytelling versus retention versus platform performance?
Am I in some sick dream? Okay, do you want my answer?
Yes.
Okay, how do I balance storytelling, retention, platform performance?
Do you want to answer this? Or
No, I do. For me, I'd actually disagree with you in some stages. And feel free to jump in and debunk me. But I would start with platform first. Because I think it outlines the box that you're operating in terms of the audience.
No, I'd
you
agree.
have.
That's your hard hat. I'd agree with that.
So that's your hard hat for you.
That's my hard
So
hat.
for me, I'd start with platform. And I'd say, okay, I understand that on short form, I'm playing a very different game to long form. I understand that if people are watching this in a theatre, I'm playing a very different game in terms of the way I edit to if they're watching on YouTube where they're 0.1 second away from the home screen. So for me, I start with platform. And then I think storytelling and retention are in tandem. I'm optimizing for retention in the first 90 seconds of this edit. I'm trying to give you as many points of values, as many promises, as many broad appeal topics that you might continue to watch for. And then I'm seeding them throughout the edit, ticking the boxes for the reasons that you watched with compelling storytelling. But I always start with platform. I see so many people on YouTube start with like a cinematic drone shot that's 15 seconds long. And I watch and I'm like, how many people have just left? How many people have just left?
Yeah.
How many people have sat for 15 seconds and watched that? Probably not many. You see, I think we tend to assume that people care. And the reality is on YouTube, if you understand the platform, you know that they are 0.1 second away from the little home button in the left out of your content. So if I understand my platform, I optimize for attention, and I do that through storytelling.
100%. I remember I had...
But I'll wear your three hats. Fine.
Wear my
Fine.
hats on. Not at the same time. But yeah, I agree. I spoke to a guy who runs a massive agency in London, LA, and Australia where they create film trailers. And I sat down with him. We had such a long talk on how he believes traditional trailer editing is starting to fall behind for motion pictures, because it's always the same. Like, it starts on a really slow, establish a shot, maybe like an echoic voice going on, and they did go through a stage where they started now creating a teaser before the trailer. So they'll do like 10 seconds of just non-stop action to grab you in, and then they'll start slow again. And I think what they've come to realize is you've got to see that whole thing as a whole, which is like, you are going to start losing people straight away unless you're keeping them engaged, keeping them
100%.
going. So yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people do fall into the trap of something that they've seen before and think, okay, that's obviously how it's worked, let me do the exact same. And they've not thought, hold on, that's a method that was mainly used in cinema,
Exactly.
or in moments where you couldn't skip. Or so it's 100%. What does a bad edit look like to you?
I'll pass this one to you. Please. It's just not in my DNA, Ant. It's just... No, I'm joking. A bad edit for me does three things. It doesn't respect the audience's time. It doesn't respect the audience's attention. And it doesn't respect the audience's context. So bad edits for me are ones where you're kind of watching, and whilst you're trying to understand what they're saying, you're trying to figure out what this all means. So bad edits just don't appreciate that, like we said, you're 0.1 second away from the home screen. Like we said, you're broken down on the side of the road whilst you watch this YouTube video because you're waiting for AA to arrive. They don't understand that you don't have the context. So for me, it's like context, clarity, and then they optimize for your attention. They try and keep you there. Bad edits just, had a long day today, gonna put my makeup on, and then it's like 15 seconds of nothing. And then we get to the point. I'm like, oh my God, maybe I'm just impatient, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. I also thought you looked beautiful in that video, by the way. Once you done makeup.
What do you think? Because you've edited so many trailers now. I'll spin this question slightly to you. What makes a bad trailer?
For me, what makes a bad trailer, I mean, even the same with bad edits, is if they lack justification. So this is another bullet point now of my checklist, which is every single aspect of our trailers, the music, the sound bites, the shots we're using, the B-roll, the text, the ratios, the framing, every single element needs to be justified in a way that if Steve came up to me, or if anyone on the street came up to me and said, I've just watched this, can you explain the reason why you use this font? I can give a 20-minute TED talk on why I use that font, what I wanted to achieve with it, the context behind it, the history behind it if I need to. Why did I choose it? And so, because for me, if you can justify it being in there, it means it's serving a purpose to the edit, right? And when we've had people come in before, when I've spoken to so many editors who send me their work and they want to give me feedback, usually they get, so many of them get stumped on the first question, which is, why did you do it like that? And they pause and they have to think really hard about the answer. And 8-9 times out of 10, it's, I thought it looked quite cool. And that's when you lost me. Because this is a moment here where someone's really opening up. This is a really emotional piece. And I remember this one specifically. I was actually recording with the guy, and he wanted live feedback on this trailer. And it was supposed to be a really emotional moment. And the way they used it to cut between the angles was they used like a burn film transition. And the music was quite loud. It was also sort of had a little bit of a faster beat that wasn't really matching his tone. And I knew what he was trying to get at because the context is there of the guy literally saying the words. I knew this was supposed to be an emotional moment, but this edit done everything but made me emotional for it. And the reason why he put those film transitions in was like, oh, we just thought it'd keep it more engaging and keep it going. And I was like, no. If anything, it just, not only did it turn me off the content, it made me lose respect for that piece. Because this guy's opening up his soul, and you're showing that you don't really care about that moment. Like, if we do like fast, energetic moments, but if we have a moment where a guest is opening up, or a real serious moment, we'll sometimes go about 30 seconds without even changing the shot, where the most we might do is do the slightest zoom in, just because, again, justified, because we want to draw you in closer to the guest. We want to get closer and closer to that eye. We don't want to start there because we don't want it to be too intimidating, but we do it slow enough that by the end of it, you're literally staring into their soul. And so if you can't justify any of those actions, that means you need to redo it, in my opinion. That's when, that's, for me, a bad edit, because then you're not making it perfect for whatever you're making it for. You're making it because you saw something that was cool and was like, I want to do the exact same thing. You're doing it because purely you've not really taken the time yourself to be like, what does this moment mean? How do I want the guest to feel? How does this represent the brand that I'm making this edit for? You're literally going, oh, I saw this on TikTok, thought it was really cool, I'm going to do the exact same thing. And that's why we see so many bad edits today. And I think especially with the way AI is going, we're going to see even more AI slop and more bad edits, because people are focusing so much on the cool shit that they're neglecting everything that's underneath the surface level of this iceberg. All of the tiny things that go into it that we can justify, they don't think about that. All they focus about is just trying to make something cool that doesn't have that impact, that doesn't leave something with the audience. And ultimately, that is what leads to empty views. You see something, you'll be like, oh, okay, fair enough. You're not drawn to that guest. You don't care about that guest. And so for me, that's when a trailer looks bad, is when you've done the top level surface stuff because it looks cool and you cannot justify any decisions that you made.
I think that's a beautiful answer.
How do you handle creative disagreements on notes?
I might get cancelled for this one. Okay, I have a potentially controversial opinion. And it's that as long as feedback is honest, your relationship with feedback determines your partnership with success.
Yes.
Okay? Listen to that again. Your relationship with feedback determines your partnership with success. For me, I've observed two types of creative people. There's one who has a lean-in ego, and there's one who has a lean-out ego. Okay, and before I explain that, I should give context that over the last 3 years of building a YouTube channel from 0 to 400,000 subscribers, we have gone over countless iterations. And I think one of the reasons why my team have been able to achieve what they have is because they all have this specific type of an ego that leans in. It's the one you want. A lean-out ego, you might know someone like this, is the type of person who, when you give feedback, they sit back. You're giving them feedback and they're like this. And they're like, well, actually, we did this because of this. And, yeah, I get what you're saying. But, actually, we did this decision for that reason. They lean back when you give them feedback. A lean-in ego type of person, they lean forward. And they look at you whilst you're giving feedback and they're listening to every single thing you say and they're taking it on board. A lean-in ego person has this chip on their shoulder with feedback. That means that whatever you say to them, they're like, oh, I have to prove them right. They lean forward and they listen. And having a lean-in ego for me, I think, is so important, because if feedback is honest and you take it on board and your relationship with it is good, then your partnership with success is destined. Truly, I believe that.
100%. And this is where, those lean-out people, do you know the only thing they've got? They've got that one hat.
Interesting.
They've got that top hat. That's the most stubborn hat. That's the hat where when the marketing hat comes in and gives feedback of like, this doesn't lead us to here, they're like, no. I know how to tell a story here.
Exactly.
I know how to do this. I went to film school, people. Like, I got a 2-2 in my dissertation on why people walk into the horror houses first. Like, this is what I mean. This is where they've got that one hat, right? And that's the hat where it's like, I can't accept your feedback because this is my experience here. My experience is telling me that I'm right because this is what I've studied. And again, it comes down to this idea of like, film, for the most part, is subjective. The amount of times me and Steve used to go round and round because he would have one thought, I would have another thought. And I loved that process because we could both justify our reasons. It wasn't stubbornness. It was, no, I truly believe, and this is why. And he was like, no, I truly believe it, and this is why. And you can go around in those circles, and you can have that, because it's subjective, right? Both can work, but it's when you sort of have that one hat on, and you, like you say, you lean back, and you're like, I don't know if I can accept your feedback, because everything I've ever grown and understood and what I've learned tells me that I've made it because of my experience, right? Because of what I've learned. I've not just decided to randomly make this crap. Like, I've put a lot of thought and care into this. That this is so, no. If I thought your feedback was correct, I would have done that the first time round, because I've earned my way here.
100%.
I've got this experience. I've got this hat on.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas what actually needs to happen is, if you then take that hat off and then you put on the marketing hat and you lean in, you'd be like, okay, why is that feedback? Oh, usually it's because, okay, it's doing a disservice to the story. Or it's like, oh, it's not really leading to anywhere. Oh, it's because actually this data here says that this should go ahead of it because this is more important. And we know people are going to click on this about Ozempic. They care more about Ozempic than they do about strength training. That's why we're giving you this feedback, to make something amazing here. So take that hat off, put the other one on, and then understand why you're getting it and why there's different reasons of doing it. Otherwise, like you say, you just withhold their feedback. And you see it so many times. And you see it a lot this is why I say you see it a lot with film students. And you see it with a lot of people who have gone down a certain route, or they've gone through education in a certain way, and they've thought something. If they do film, because it is subjective, that's their opinion is golden. That's their one route through it. And so when they receive any sort of creative disagreement or any feedback, that's when they become stubborn. And you have to just learn to lean in, take that hat off, put another one on, and see things from another point of view. So it's like 100%.
This feels like the hokey cokey. We're telling people to lean in, lean out, put hat on, take it off. Like, this is getting a bit ridiculous now.
This is how you teach kids. But yeah, it's I think as well, it's you know what I love most about this question is, I think so much of it comes from having a bit of common sense about this sort of thing as well. And for example, I won't name the name, but at my previous job, I would have to do a lot of edits and a lot of filming work for huge studios and like Hollywood directors, etc. And I remember once when I sent an edit to this famous film director for his brand, and he just texted me back with the shit emoji. And I was just saying, I was like,
I love that.
What the fuck am I supposed to do with this? And so in his eyes, it's like, this isn't salvageable. Like, no. Like, there's no feedback I can give you that would make this better. And so this is where the common sense prevails of like, I know this is a good edit. Again, I've got that hat on. I know this is a good edit. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it this way. Like, you're a fucking big time director. I'm not going to send you like shit, because I know how, like, he goes hard on editing. He's got a very rhythmic editing style. People love him for it. And so I know that this is playing to your wants. And I also know that if I catch you on a bad day, you ain't going to like anything.
Interesting.
So this is when I go, you know what? I'm going to take a step back here, put on the other hat. And then I was like, okay, is this going to, does it tick this box? Does it do this? Yes. Okay, I just really don't understand why that. And then like a week later, I sent him the exact same edit. And he replied, I love this so much, I've just shared it with my accountant. Because he was through his accountant at the time. Which is high praise for him, I guess. And it was just like, and it was the exact same edit. And that's when I sort of feel like, okay, there's that common sense element. And again, this is, again, understanding that is subjective. And this is why I think justification is so important. Because if I couldn't justify all of those reasons why that I done that edit, I don't really have a right to go to and be like, I've got a little bit of a gut here that I think this works for you. I think this is maybe just a different timing issue or something going on. I'm going to send it again. And you're either going to come back with more constructive criticism, or you're going to send that back again and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. And then at least then I know your true answer here. And so I think common sense is often something that we miss out on a lot. And I think it's very easy to go down the route of like, okay, everything someone says means you have to implement. For example, every single piece of feedback you get is, you're 100% right, I need to do this. Whereas it's taken me time as an editor and as a content creator, again, to be able to put on this other hat and be like, no, I think I'm onto something here. But I'm going to still explore other avenues. I'm still going to make sure this ticks the box. But once I cannot find any other ways, I'm going to go back and justify why I think this works, because that's why you've hired me. That's why I'm in this position. And so I think for me, that's one thing I've learned when it comes to those creative disagreements, is that a lot of the time it can be subjective. You've just got to be able to see their point of view, understand their point of view, be curious about their point of view, explore their point of view, and you still might not get to their conclusion. Then you have a conversation to be had.
Interesting, yeah. I'd actually add to that. I think I agree with most of what you've said, but I also think feedback is subjective, but you need to understand that you might be in an objective world. So I see this often where someone might say, but my boss doesn't agree with me. And, my boss doesn't agree with me. Like, yeah, that is subjective feedback from them, but you operate within their objective world. So I think you have to be able, as a creative, to have high EQ to understand that when your boss sends you a shit emoji, there might actually be, you need to have the resilience to say, okay, why? Like drop down into what could they possibly be saying? Because yes, you might have a subjective opinion and they have a subjective opinion, but you operate in their objective world. So your job as a creative is to be resilient and figure it out. Take it on the chin, lean
100%.
in, send them a new option, and understand that even if it's their opinion, you operate in their world. So actually, it's objective.
100%. And that's why I sat on it and I explored those whole options.
True.
But it was
True.
because I knew it was made in his world.
Yeah.
Because then I wouldn't send it,
True.
type thing. So it's but I think today there's very much, like you say, there are so many people who just assume that they're right.
Yeah.
And they assume that there is no other avenue. And so I think it's important to know that you can be right. And your opinion obviously always matters, especially if you can justify your response.
100%.
But you do need to explore those avenues.
Anthony, you've given a lot of value today. You've said a lot about a lot of things for editors and creatives. But what is your final message to creatives or anyone who's looking to become a content creator?
I think my final message has to be that you don't have to be the most talented person in the room. You don't have to have the gift as what people say people need to have to become successful at something. What you do need to be is the most hard-working person in that room. And so with me, I will happily say that I'm not the most talented editor in the world. I know that. I've met so many editors and I know how talented they are. I've met so many storytellers and know how talented they are. The fact that they're making huge Hollywood blockbusters or winning Oscars tells me that there are much better editors than I am. Where I think I've done well and where I've gotten farther is because no matter what I do, I will more or less guarantee that I will outcare every single other person in that room, no matter what it takes. And it's sort of like, I'm lucky in a sense that that's sort of been me my whole life. If I was to play a game of football, for that hour, I'm doing nothing but playing football. I am going in for every tackle. I'm running like a dog. I'm going to try and think of the game. On all fours.
There you go.
I'm gonna try and score. I'm gonna try and defend. I'm gonna do whatever I can to help my team win a game. I'm gonna try so fucking hard, and it's a game of football. When we go off and we've done that skiing trip, after I'd never skied before. I was supposed to do this 3-day training school thing. After day one, me, Danny, and Steve spoke to the instructor and said, "Can you just take us off off this training course and can we just do normal stuff now, go down normal routes? And that's when I learned the most, because I was like, you know what, whilst I'm here, I'm going to just ski as much as I can. I'm going to go on every single slope I can. I flew into about 3 trees. I nearly broke my ankle about 6 times. There's a video somewhere of literally me falling over every single time. But for those 3 days, I cared so much about skiing that by the end of it, I was able to join you and Jack and Jem and Penny and all of those people. I mean, the best way I can sum it up is like most of the ski lifts that I was doing on the first 2 days was probably about 2 minutes up. And that's to get you obviously up to the hill and then you ski down. When I then went up with you, I think the ski lift was for about 10 minutes, to the extent that we went through clouds. I've never gone through clouds unless I've been on a plane before. I didn't think that. I genuinely thought you stopped breathing if you go past clouds. So, and then all I had was Penny on one side being like, "And you're going to be great." And then I had Grace Andrews on the other side talking to someone else being like, "I don't think we should have taken him on this one." So I had these two things going on in my mind. But the fact that I got there was because I cared so much about skiing that I was able to just leave the rest behind and do that thing. And like, I'm so proud of that. Like, and so talent only gets you so far. Out caring gets you further, in my opinion.
Dude, it's so true. And Ant is probably the person who cares the most in any single room. I've seen it in your edits.
Thanks, bro.
Truly.
What's yours?
What is my final message to creators and creatives? Okay, I'd start by asking you a question, and it's, what do you want? I'd ask a creative what they want. I'd ask them, secondly, what doubts do they have? And typically when I do this, they say a few things. I'm not really a creative person. Actually, I'm not really an editor. I've been more of an academic, and I actually, I'm not really that person. I'm not really that person who's killed more creative careers than anything else in the world. And what I would say to them is, you need to understand the self-perception theory that scientists have created, okay? A lot of us think that what we think is what we believe. Self-perception theory understands that your brain is quite literally watching what you do, how you act, how late you doom scrolled, how late you didn't do the work. And from that, it is creating your beliefs. So to creatives out there, question your beliefs and then understand that you're not going to change them by thinking about them. Belief is the receipt to evidence you've created. If you want to be a creator, if you want to be a creative, how often are you doing the thing? How often are you putting yourself out there? You need to collect more evidence every single day that you are the person, not that you think you are, but that you act as. That's my advice.
Bro, amen. I feel like you was talking to me there. I was like, shit. I do need to gather evidence.
I just think it's so true. I think evidence. It's why you look at some people and you're like, how the hell did they get in the room? They just had more evidence. And evidence leads to confidence, and confidence leads to action, and actions creates new
100%.
worlds.
It's like the message. I mean, we get a lot of messages from editors, don't we? Saying like, what's the first thing that I do? How can I get to this stage? How can I edit like you is usually one that we get a lot. And here's like a little bit of homework that I give them, a little project that they really want to do. Think of your perfect client. It could be McDonald's, it could be Nike, it could be Adidas, it could be Toys R Us, it could be any brand, it could be Apple. Now imagine Apple have come to you and been like, here's our brief. We want you to make a Christmas TV commercial for us. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's your brief. Now, how are you as an editor going to create this with what you've got in front of you? You obviously don't have the budget to go off and shoot something. Okay, so now I'm going to have to either start relying on AI, or I'm going to have to start relying on stock footage, for example. I can't get a composer to write the music for me. Okay, so I'm going to have to really dig deep and search for all of this music. I need to write the piece myself. And I've got all of these challenges and all of these restrictions on me. So how can I create something that this client, that Apple, would love to have on their TV, that represents that brand over Christmas, one of the most important seasons of the year for sales, right? Give yourself particular projects like that, because not only does it give you a brief and a goal, it gives you a chance to go and get influenced. It gets you a chance to go inspired. Okay, I need to go and watch. Not only do I need to go and watch Apple's marketing campaigns from the past, I need to start watching Christmas campaigns. How can I merge these two together? So now you're starting to think a little bit more like a marketer and a creator, but you're giving yourself a purpose to create this end product. And I think that's where so many people struggle, because they want to become fantastic editors, but they've got nothing to edit. And so they then spend half the time going, oh, maybe I should make a music video, or maybe I should make a short film, maybe I should do this, maybe I should go into weddings. And then they end up doing things that they're not necessarily too keen on doing, for example, because they're at the mercy of what they can get, because they can't make a decision of like, well, if I make something, it's got to go on and do well. If you then go off and give yourself this client, give yourself this brief, give yourself like the chance to execute something like that, what does that do? That allows you then to start speaking to teams, those dream clients, and be like, this is a piece of spec work I've made. That's specific to them. There's loads of companies like Apple, technology companies, phone companies, you know, laptop companies, all of these sort of brands. There's loads of people that you can start reaching out to. There's agencies that you can then reach out to. If someone was to come to me to work for Diary of a CEO to make trailers, what do you think I would want to see? A fucking trailer. That's what I would want to see. I don't want to see so much of a music video. You can send me that stuff. Okay, maybe there's enough in there for me to see the potential of seeing of how that would work. But make it easy for me. Be like, I've made this trailer, so I can watch it and be like, oh, he's really made that trailer. This is amazing. I'm going to bring him and her on, and I want to work with that person because they get it. They've done the research. They've done all of that. And that's essentially a spec work. So that's a little piece of homework that I usually give out to people, is like, think of your dream, think of the, like you say, who do you want to make content for? What is it that you want to create? Think of that, and then give yourself an actual project to work on, with a brief, with a client, with a budget, if you really want to, even though you're going to pay for it yourself. Think of all of those elements and actually execute it, because by the end of it, you've got something a bit more substantial that you can give to them. That's more than just a university project that you made. That's more than a show reel that you made, hoping that they can see the talent in that work, where they can see something specific to them that speaks to them and makes them feel a little bit more special.
Yeah, man. Jack Sylvester. Okay, I know you're watching this clip. I know you're looking at me right now. Jack is the man who has built Diary of a CEO from the ground up. He is the person who worked day and night with Steven Bartlett to build the podcast. I want you on Creators, because you have more knowledge than YouTube than any single person I've ever met. You have more knowledge on production than most people in the traditional world. And there are creators out there who need to know what you know. So you should be on Creators. And who do you want to see?
The person I want to see on this so much, Grace Andrews. This is now for you.
Yes. This is a public service announcement.
This is public service. Grace Andrews, please come on Creators. I mean, Grace Andrews is one of those people where I'm privileged that we sort of get access to her brain for free.
That's wild.
For now.
The day she starts charging us.
The day she starts charging us.
Oh my God.
But we are so lucky, the fact that all we have to do is send Grace a WhatsApp or give her a call or meet up with her, and she'll help us so much. But the day I met Grace was one of those days I realised I knew fuck all about so much. And what I loved so much about Grace was that she persevered to ensure that everyone in this team just knew their shit, just kept working hard, kept caring. And so for me, Grace Andrews is someone who has so much knowledge. Yep. She's always learning. She leans into data so much, but she also understands where the world is at the moment, especially in marketing, especially with social media. And what she has in that brain is just pure gold dust. So
agree.
Grace Andrews, Creators, make it happen, please. We love you.
Okay, Anthony, I was about to ask you to plug yourself, but in fact, I'm going to plug you, and I'm going to tell people why they should follow you and where they can find you. Anthony R. Smith on Instagram is where you can see three things. behind the scenes breakdowns on how he builds the Diary of a CEO trailers. You can see the specific techniques that he is using day in, day out. And then the third thing, the thing that impresses me most of all, is you can see Ant's thought leadership. His brain works differently as a creative. And if you are a creative, or if you know one, I have no doubt that there's principles that he talks about that you will learn from. If you create content, if you're a public speaker, if you work in marketing, you should follow Ant.
Damn. Okay, and for those who want to hear more from Will, which I highly recommend you do, because here's the thing. Before I met Will, I was learning a lot. And then Will came into my life, and my rate of learning just grew so much more. Not just because, like, even just then, when you're giving your answers, you just have these little nuggets of pure wisdom and those examples that you give. But not only that, seeing how you learn and seeing you come in, and when you speak to other people and when you come in and talk, you have something new that you've learned, that you've picked up. That sort of reminded me of, like, okay, the only way I'm going to get further and further is if I start learning more myself. And so for me, it's been like one of the biggest honors knowing you and learning from you every single day. But if everyone else wants to do that, Instagram is an incredible place. BTS with Will, got it. And the thing I most love about that is the amount of depth that you actually go into these posts. So Will does, for example, he does a lot of carousel posts where he will focus on a particular topic, and that topic, you wouldn't necessarily always think that it's more than just content creation, but it is, right? It's usually about time management. It's about hard work. It's about dealing with the pits. It's all of those, like, these are things that you can also just implement into your life, which is what I love most about it. When usually I read these sort of things and go through it, I'm often thinking, like, damn, this is actually relating to me on a different level than just making films. And so for me, it's one of the most valuable profiles. That's why I've favorited it. That's why I've told my algorithm that whenever you post, to pull it straight on. And so, yeah, I recommend anyone follow, like, all of your stuff.
Do you know who else I recommend? The people behind these cameras that you're watching right now. Creators on Creators have been grateful enough to have us here today. And I truly believe that if you've made it to the end of this podcast, if you are following Creators on Creators, you are the part of something special. This is a very unique platform. Creators on Creators on Instagram, Creators on Creators on YouTube. You need to be a part of this. I really feel privileged to be here today, to be asked to do this. And I'm grateful to be at, like, the start of what is going to be a monumental wave for them. So thank you for having us, genuinely.
Yeah,
from the bottom of our hearts.
And 100% I'm taking these if I'm allowed. This is getting framed.
Yeah, this is dope. This is really dope.
I love these.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ant.
Thank you, mate.
Quick one. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Creators on Creators. We hope you enjoyed it.
We are so thankful to Anthony and Will for being a part of the episode. We hope you gained so many insights. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to Creators on Creators on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bye.
Wow.